Hey guys, tonight we are traveling back in time to the Dutch Golden Age, a period of immense wealth, artistic genius, and a baffling obsession with garden flowers. It's a gentle, peculiar story, but I should offer a friendly warning. You probably wouldn't survive this era. Not because of any great danger, but because the cheese was unpasteurized. The shoes were made of wood, and the concept of personal space was still a few centuries away. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's a quiet way of saying thanks, and it helps our little corner of YouTube find other people who enjoy these sleepy journeys. And if you have a moment, I'd love to see where you're listening from. Let me know your city or country, and what time it is there. It's always wonderful to see how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Asterisk, the first thing you notice isn't a sight, but a smell. It's a thick, complicated perfume of damp salt, tar, and wet wood, all carried on a breeze that feels heavy with moisture. You're standing on the deck of a wide-bellied merchant ship. The flight, as it glides with practiced ease into the bustling port of Amsterdam. The year is 1634. The deck beneath your feet gives a final, gentle groan as the sails are furled, and the sounds of the city rush in to fill the silence. It's a chorus of humanity, men shouting in Dutch, French, and languages you don't recognize. The screech of gulls fighting over a fisherman's discarded scraps, and the rhythmic creak of 100 wooden gantry cranes hoisting cargo from ships just like yours. This is the heart of the world's richest empire, and it sounds wonderfully, overwhelmingly busy. Asterisk, your journey is over. You can feel the tension leaving your shoulders as you watch the crew expertly toss thick ropes to the dockhands below. For weeks, all you've seen is the gray slate of the North Sea. Now, you're greeted by a city that seems to rise straight from the water. Amsterdam. It doesn't sprawl outwards like other cities. It climbs upwards. Tall, narrow houses press against each other for support, their ornate gables forming a jagged, charming skyline. They lean at odd angles, like a row of old friends sharing a joke after one too many mugs of ale. It's a well-known fact that this city is built on marshland, its foundations resting on millions of wooden piles driven deep into the mud. The lean is not just charming, it's a constant slow-motion surrender to gravity. You watch as a massive bale of Indonesian pepper is lifted from a neighboring ship's hold, swinging precariously in the air before being guided through a high window on the 4th floor of a warehouse. You notice then that nearly every gabled house has a large iron hook jutting out from its quirky butt. Essential piece of architecture in a city where the staircases are too narrow to carry anything larger than a cabbage. Asterisk, stepping off the gangplank onto the solid stone of the quay is a relief. The ground feels wonderfully stable after so long at sea. The air here, at street level, is different. It's a mix of coal smoke from 1,000 chimneys, the earthy scent of the canals, and the surprising, exotic aroma of spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves wafting from the open doors of the very warehouses you just saw being filled. This is the scent of money. You begin to walk, weaving your way through a crowd that moves with a purpose you don't yet share. Barrels are rolled past you, merchants in dark, severe hats haggle over prices, and children dart through the forest of adult legs, laughing. The cobblestones are slick and uneven, and you have to watch your step. Asterisk, you follow the curve of a newly dug canal, one of the famous Grachtengordel, or canal belts, that are expanding the city. The water is a murky, olive green, reflecting the tall houses in its rippled surface. Small boats, laden with goods, are pulled along by silent operators, creating a second, quieter layer of traffic beneath the bustling streets. It's all so incredibly organized, yet chaotic at the same time. Historians still wonder if the legendary stench of 17th century cities was truly as overwhelming to the people living in them as we imagine, or if it was just the background noise of life, a smell you simply stopped noticing, the way you stop hearing a ticking clock. To you, it's noticeable, but not unpleasant. It's the smell of life, of industry, of a city at the peak of its power. Asterisk, you turn a corner, leaving the noisy commercial docks behind, and find yourself on a quieter, more distinguished street. Here, the houses are grander. The brickwork is immaculate. The windows are larger, made of expensive clear glass that glitters in the pale afternoon sun. The ornate front doors are polished to a high sheen, with gleaming brass knockers in the shape of lions or seashells. This is where the successful merchants live, the men who command the fleets you saw in the harbor. There's a sense of quiet confidence here, a stark contrast to the boisterous energy of the port. You see a man in a fine velvet doublet step out of one such house, nodding to you curtly as he passes. There's no hint of what goes on behind these elegant facades. No clue to the strange and wonderful obsession that is quietly taking root in the city's soil and its soul. You are simply an observer, a traveler, taking it all in, breathing the air of unparalleled prosperity. You find yourself drawn to one particularly grand house, its windows glowing with the warm, inviting light of a fireplace within. It feels like a good place to rest, to understand what makes this city tick. The heavy oak door swings inward before you even have a chance to reach for the brass knocker. A young, serious-looking maid in a crisp white bonnet gives you a quick, assessing glance and then steps aside, holding the door open. You're not quite sure why you've been allowed in. Perhaps your traveler's clothes make you look like you have business here, or perhaps the master of the house simply enjoys an unexpected visitor. You don't ask. You just step across the threshold, and in doing so, you step out of the noisy, chaotic 17th century and into a pocket of profound, deliberate silence. The air inside is still and warm, smelling faintly of beeswax and wood smoke from the hearth. The floor is a checkerboard of black and white marble tiles, so polished you can see the distorted reflection of the high, mullioned window at the far end of the hall. Asterisk, a man emerges from a doorway to your right. He is tall and lean, dressed in the severe, dark clothing favored by wealthy Dutch Calvinists. No frivolous lace, no ostentatious colors, just exquisitely tailored black wool that speaks of its quality in the way it hangs. This must be the owner. He introduces himself simply as Peter, a merchant. His voice is low and measured, and his eyes have a shrewd, calculating quality. But there's a flicker of something else there too, a passion. He sees you looking around his home, taking in the dark, carved wood furniture, and the large, dramatic seascape painting that dominates one wall. It's a depiction of a Dutch trading ship navigating a storm, a not-so-subtle reminder of the source of his wealth and the risks involved. He offers you a small, wry smile. "It is quiet in here," he says, as if reading your thoughts. "The world is loud enough outside." Asterisk, he gestures for you to follow him, not into the main parlor, but towards a smaller room at the back of the house. This room is different. It's flooded with a soft, milky light from tall south-facing windows. The walls are paneled in a lighter oak, and instead of grand paintings, there are shelves lined with blue and white Delftware, pottery, and curious objects from distant lands. A piece of intricate Chinese jade, a nautilus shell mounted in silver, a book bound in what looks like red Moroccan leather. It's a room designed for quiet contemplation, a sanctuary from the world of commerce. And it is here, in the very center of the room, on a small, octagonal table, that you see it. It's sitting in a simple, unglazed earthenware pot, looking both profoundly important and entirely out of place. A single flower, a tulip. Asterisk, you walk closer. You've seen tulips before, of course, in formal gardens, planted in neat, respectable rows of red and yellow. But this is something else entirely. This flower is a work of art, a rebellion in petals, It stands tall and proud on a sturdy green stem, its cup-shaped bloom reaching for the sunlight. The base color is a creamy, luminous white, like the inside of a seashell. But it's the patterns that are so breathtaking. Flung across the white background are intricate, unpredictable splashes and feathers of the deepest crimson, so dark it's almost black. The lines are not blurred but sharp, as if drawn by a master calligrapher with a single, steady flick of the wrist. Each petal is a unique canvas, the pattern shifting and swirling. This is a broken tulip, a flower whose plain, solid color has inexplicably shattered into a masterpiece of stripes and flames. This, Peter tells you in a near whisper, is a Semper Augustus, the most coveted, most legendary tulip in all the Netherlands. Asterisk, he doesn't tell you its price in gilt. That would be vulgar. Instead, he tells you what it represents. The price of this bulb, he says, his eyes fixed on the flower, could purchase that grand house you saw at the end of the canal. The one with the sculpted gable. It's a staggering thought. A house, a physical structure of brick and mortar, traded for a single, perishable bloom. This is a well-known fact of the period. The most prized bulbs really did fetch prices equivalent to real estate. What's lesser known is how these treasures were displayed. Not in opulent vases or large bouquets, but often alone, just like this one, so that their unique beauty and staggering value could be appreciated without distraction. It was the botanical equivalent of displaying a single, perfect diamond on a black velvet cloth. Asterisk, you look from the flower to the merchant's face and see a mix of pride and, perhaps, a touch of anxiety. An investment this beautiful is also this fragile. He is guarding a living treasure. Historians and art critics still debate the meaning of these flowers in Dutch culture. Were the still-life paintings filled with them a celebration of God-given beauty and Dutch prosperity? Or were they a vanity symbol, a moral warning about the fleeting nature of earthly pleasures and the foolishness of vanity? Looking at this perfect, priceless flower, you can see both sides. It is a miracle of nature, and at the same time, it's an object of such intense and temporary value that it seems almost absurd. The obsession feels less like a public mania and more like a private, feverish religion, worshipped in quiet, sunlit rooms like this one. You have just seen its holiest relic. You give Peter a respectful nod of thanks and step back out into the late afternoon air. The heavy door closes behind you with a soft, definitive click, and the sounds of the city return, though they feel more muted now. The image of that single, perfect tulip, the Semper Augustus, is seared into your mind. Its impossible beauty, and even more impossible value, have rewired your understanding of this world. A flower worth a house. It's a concept so strange, so delightfully absurd, that you need a moment to process it. The sun is beginning to dip lower, painting the tall, gabled facades in hues of gold and orange. The long shadows of the houses stretch across the canal, their reflections darkening in the water. You decide the best place to digest a reality-bending experience is a place where reality is often debated, bent, and occasionally broken. A tavern. Asterisk, you wander for a few minutes, until you find one. Its painted wooden sign creaking softly in the breeze. Pushing open the heavy door, you're enveloped by a wave of warmth and noise. The tavern is a cozy, low-ceilinged cavern of dark wood. Its air thick with the sweet, cloying smell of Dutch pipe tobacco and the yeasty aroma of spilled ale. It's the perfect antidote to the pristine, silent reverence of Peter's study. Here, life is loud, messy, and lived in. You find an empty stool at a worn, scarred wooden table in a corner. Order a small clay mug of beer from a bustling barmaid, and settle in to listen. The room is buzzing with the day's gossip. The low hum of a dozen different conversations blending into a single, comfortable drone. Asterisk, soon. Your ears pick out a recurring word from a nearby table. Tulpen tulips. But the tone here is entirely different. It's not the hushed, worshipful whisper of the wealthy merchant. This is the excited, speculative chatter of craftsmen and shopkeepers. A burly man with flour dusting his eyebrows, a baker, you guess, is leaning forward, speaking with animated gestures. I tell you, he says, thumping his mug on the table for emphasis, it's a mystery, a beautiful sickness. Another man, smaller and wearing the ink-stained cuffs of a clerk, nods in agreement. My neighbor spent a fortune on a dozen Gouda bulbs, plain as you please, planted them by his fence. This spring, 2 of them came up, broken, flamed with the most magnificent scarlet. He sold one of the offsets for more than he paid for all 12. Asterisk. This is it. This is the secret you were missing. You lean back, taking a slow sip of your beer, and listen intently. They are talking about the breaking, that magical, unpredictable transformation from a plain, solid-colored tulip into a feathered, flamed masterpiece, like the one you saw. They don't know what causes it, and that's the heart of the obsession. The baker calls it a sickness. The clerk calls it a wink from God. They're both right, in a way. The historical fact is that this stunning variegation was the result of a mosaic virus, an infection that interfered with the flower's pigmentation. But to these men, in this smoky tavern, it's a beautiful, profitable miracle. They understood that you couldn't get a broken tulip from a seed. Planting a seed from a Semper Augustus would only ever yield a plain, boring flower. The magic, the pattern, and the value were only transferable through the bulb itself and the small offsets, or baby bulbs, it produced. Asterisk. A third man at the table, a textile dyer with fingers stained a faint indigo, chimes in. He seems to be the resident expert. You have to know your types, he says, wiping foam from his mustache. There are the rosen, with their delicate pink flames on a white ground. Then the biblomens, white with shades of purple and lilac. My favorite, he says, with a conspiratorial wink, are the a good strong yellow or gold background, with streaks of red, brown, or violet. Truly wild. This lesser-known detail, this careful classification of the patterns, shows you just how serious this has become. It's not just gambling. It's a connoisseur's game, with its own language and its own set of rules. It's like discussing fine art or vintage wine, except the canvas is a petal and the vintage is a root. Asterisk. The baker scoffs good-natured. Classifications. I knew a man who swore you could encourage the breaking by burying herring heads in the soil next to the bulbs. Another who claimed he could do it by playing the flute to them every morning. The table erupts in laughter. It's a joke, but it hints at the rampant speculation and folk theories swirling around the phenomenon. Historians still debate just how much the average person truly understood or cared about the botanical realities. Was it an accepted mystery? A divine lottery they were happy to participate in? Or were there whispers of a more scientific, if not yet understood, cause? In this tavern, at least, the consensus seems to be that it's simply unknowable, which is precisely what makes it so thrilling. It's a gamble, blessed by nature's own hand. You watch them, these ordinary men, their faces flushed with ale and excitement, and you realize the mania isn't just for the wealthy in their quiet studies. It's here too, in the heart of the city's working class, a shared dream of plucking a fortune right out of the dirt. The night deepens outside, and the tavern grows warmer and more crowded. The air gets thicker, the laughter louder. The men at the next table have moved on from debating the merits of the bazaars and are now on to the real business, trading. This isn't a formal auction house or a stock exchange. This is the heart of where the tulip market began for the common person, right here in the smoky back rooms of inns and taverns. It started not as a grand financial scheme, but as a social pastime among friends and colleagues, a way to pass the long, dark winter evenings. You watch as the dyer pulls a small cloth-wrapped bundle from his pocket and places it on the table with a theatrical flourish. The conversations around them quieten slightly, heads turning to watch. Asterisk. He unwraps the cloth carefully. Inside, Nestled on a bed of soft wool is a single tulip bulb. It's unremarkable to your eyes, a brownish, papery onion, really. It looks dry and utterly lifeless. But the way the men lean in, their eyes glinting in the candlelight, tells you this is no common garden vegetable. And Admiral Vander, EIJCK, the dyer announces, his voice filled with a reverence that seems comical for such a humble-looking object. A fine, strong bulb. Produced 3 healthy offsets last year. The clerk picks it up, weighing it in his palm. He turns it over, inspecting its base for any sign of rot, his brow furrowed in concentration. The bulb is measured not by weight, in grams or ounces, but in a peculiar unit called an AAS, a tiny measurement typically used by apothecaries and goldsmiths. This detail highlights the absurdity treating a dormant flower root with the same precision as a precious metal. Asterisk, the bidding starts. There is no auctioneer, just a casual back. The baker opens with a bid of 20 gil. The clerk scoffs and raises it to 25. A man you hadn't noticed before, a ship's carpenter with calloused hands, quietly says, 30. The bidding is done in cash, but also in kind. The baker, seeing the price climb, changes his offer. 25 guilders, he says, and a new suit of clothes for your eldest son. The dyer considers this, stroking his chin. The trading of goods for bulbs was an incredibly common practice, a historical fact that paints a vivid picture of a semi-barter economy running parallel to the cash market. People traded livestock, furniture, acres of land, and, in one documented case, a fully functioning brewery for the most desirable bulbs. Asterisk, you notice a young man standing at the edge of the group, watching with wide, hungry eyes. He can't be more than 20. He clutches a half-empty mug, but he isn't drinking. He's absorbing. He's learning the language, the rhythm of the trade. The bidding for the Admiral bulb continues to climb. The final offer comes from the clerk, 45 guilders, and a promise to draft a legal document for the dyer, free of charge. The dyer smiles, satisfied, and the deal is struck with a round of handshakes and a fresh order of ale. The bulb is carefully rewrapped and handed over to its proud new owner, who slips it into an inside pocket of his coat, as if it were a bag of diamonds. Asterisk, a quieter man at the table, who hasn't spoken a word all evening, finally pipes up. He's a scholar, you think, judging by his spectacles and the thoughtful way he puffs on his long clay pipe. It is a strange thing, he muses, more to himself than to anyone else, that we should value so highly something that sleeps for half the year and whose beauty, when it wakes, lasts but a fortnight. It's a moment of clarity in the midst of the fever. He has put his finger on the central, baffling question of the whole phenomenon. Why this flower? Why now? Historians still puzzle over the exact conditions that created this perfect storm. Was it a result of newfound national wealth and pride after the war with Spain? Was it the Calvinist work ethic creating a surplus of disposable income that needed a speculative outlet? Or was it something simpler, a collective human fascination with rare, unpredictable beauty? There's no single answer. Asterisk, you watch the clerk, who is now staring into his mug with a dreamy expression, no doubt imagining the magnificent, flame-streaked flower that will emerge from his newly acquired brown lump. He's not just buying a bulb, he's buying a dream, a ticket to a lottery where the prize is not just wealth, but status and beauty, in this dark, boisterous tavern, surrounded by the scent of tobacco and ambition. You understand that this mania is not just about greed, it's about hope. It's about the intoxicating possibility that something small, dormant, and ordinary could, with a bit of luck and a little soil, blossom into a fortune. Leaving the tavern's warm, smoky embrace, you step back into the cool, quiet night. The moon is high now, casting a silvery sheen on the canal water and illuminating the narrow street. Most of the city's windows are dark, the good citizens of Amsterdam long abed. The boisterous energy of the evening has faded, replaced by a profound stillness. The only sounds are the distant lapping of water against stone, and the echo of your own footsteps on the cobblestones. You find yourself walking away from the grand merchant houses and into the warren of streets where the city's artisans live and work. Here, the houses are smaller, built closer together, their upper floors leaning out over the street as if sharing secrets in the dark. You pass a weaver's workshop. Through the unshuttered window, you can see a single candle still burning. Its small flame, a lonely beacon in the darkness. Drawn by the light, you peer inside. The room is dominated by a massive wooden loom, a complex web of threads and levers that stands silent for the night. Sitting at a small table beside it is a man, his shoulders slumped in thought. He's a weaver. You can tell from the calluses on his hands and the stray threads clinging to his simple woolen tunic. He's not working. Instead, he's staring intently at a small object in his hand. From this distance, you can't see what it is, but you can guess. It's a bulb. You can almost hear his thoughts. The silent, frantic calculations turning over in his mind. He's a craftsman, a man who earns his living through skill, patience, and hard labor. His income is steady, but modest. He likely has a family sleeping in the room above, their lives dependent on the rhythmic clatter of that loom. The bulb in his hand represents a departure from everything he knows. It's not a tool or a raw material. It's a gamble. He probably acquired it in a trade for one of his finest pieces of cloth, a tapestry that took him months to weave. His wife may have called him a fool. His friends in the Weavers' Guild might have warned him against such frivolity. But the stories, the whispers you heard in the tavern, are too intoxicating to ignore. The story of a shoemaker who bought a single bulb and sold its offsets a year later for enough to buy his own shop. The tale of an orphan who used her small inheritance to invest in a handful of viceroy bulbs and became a woman of property. These stories were the fuel for the mania, and it's a well-documented fact that the craze spread far beyond the wealthy elite, capturing the imaginations of the middle and working classes. Shopkeepers, farmers, and artisans people, like this weaver, began to risk their savings, and sometimes their entire livelihoods, on the tulip market. You watch him turn the bulb over and over in his palm. To him, it's not just a potential flower. It's a potential future. It's the chance to escape the endless, repetitive work of the loom, to own a larger house, away from the smelly canals, to provide his children with a dowry or an apprenticeship he could otherwise never afford. It's a silent, dormant seed of hope. What's lesser known is the social pressure that began to build around this trade. In the tight-knit communities of the guilds, not participating in the bulb trade could be seen as a lack of ambition, or worse, a lack of faith in the glorious future of the Dutch Republic. Investing in tulips became a patriotic act, a sign that you believed in the nation's ever-expanding prosperity. Historians still debate how much of the tulip mania was driven by pure speculative greed versus this kind of social contagion. Was this weaver a shrewd investor making a calculated risk, or was he simply afraid of being the only one on his street who didn't seize this incredible opportunity? Looking at his worried expression, you suspect it's a bit of both. He finally sets the bulb down on the table. Its humble, onion-like form looking small and insignificant next to the mighty loom. He runs a hand through his hair, a gesture of exhaustion and anxiety. For a moment, his gaze drifts to the massive, silent machine that has defined his entire life. It is safe, reliable, and predictable. It will always produce cloth, and that cloth will always provide a living, however modest. The bulb is the opposite. It is a mystery, a promise of everything or nothing. He is standing at a crossroads, caught between the world of tangible, hard-won value and a new, abstract world of speculative worth. He blows out the candle, plunging the room into darkness. You don't know what he will decide to do. if he will plant the bulb in his small back garden and pray for it to break, or if he will sell it at the next tavern auction, hoping to double his investment. You only know that for this one man, in this quiet, moonlit moment. A simple flower bulb holds the weight of his entire world. Asterisk, asterisk. The weaver's dilemma stays with you as you continue your nocturnal walk through the sleeping city. The idea of trading a year's worth of labor, woven into a tapestry, for a single, dormant bulb, feels like a profound shift in the nature of reality. Value has become detached from substance. It's no longer about what something is, but what it might become. This thought leads you, almost unconsciously, toward the center of the city, to the Grand Dam Square, where the new town hall is under construction. It is here, in the heart of Amsterdam's commercial life, that this new form of trade found its most peculiar and sophisticated expression. Asterisk, you find a bench in the shadows of the square, and watch as a few late-night figures scurry across the wide, open space. The air is cold now, and you pull your traveler's cloak a little tighter. The topic on your mind is the wonderfully absurd concept of windhandel, or wind trade. It was the logical, if slightly unhinged, next step in the tulip craze. Most of the frantic trading you overheard in the tavern took place during the winter months. This is a crucial historical fact. The bulbs themselves were safely in the ground from roughly September to May. They couldn't be physically handed over. So, what were people actually buying and selling with such fervor? They were trading paper. They were trading promises. Asterisk, you imagine two men meeting in a tavern, not unlike the one you just left. One agrees to sell a Semper Augustus bulb to the other for, say, 3,000 gil. The seller doesn't have the bulb, it's in his garden, sleeping beneath the frozen soil. The buyer doesn't have 3,000 gil. They draw up a contract, a simple note, signed by both parties, and perhaps a witness, stating that the bulb will be delivered in the spring, at which point the money will be paid. This piece of paper is now, in essence, the bulb. The buyer can then sell this contract to a third person for a higher price, say 3,500 guilders, making a handsome profit without ever seeing or touching the flower itself. This is it's futures trading, 17th century style, conducted with no regulation, no oversight, and a great deal of gin. Asterisk, this practice allowed the market to accelerate at a terrifying pace. A single contract for a prized bulb could change hands 5 or 10 times in one afternoon, its price soaring with each transaction. The money being made wasn't on the flowers themselves, but on the ever-inflating value of the paper they were written on. A lesser-known detail is that these contracts were often incredibly specific, detailing not just the name of the tulip variety, but its exact weight in osen. This gave a scientific, reassuring veneer of precision to what was essentially a wild gamble. It was an attempt to impose order and predictability on a market that was fundamentally driven by emotion and collective belief. Asterisk, sitting here in the quiet square, you can see the appeal. It feels clean, modern, almost magical. You don't need a garden. You don't need to know the first thing about horticulture. You just need a bit of cash, a lot of nerve, and the ability to convince someone that the piece of paper in your hand will be worth more tomorrow than it is today. It's a pure distillation of hope and greed, untethered from the messy, physical reality of dirt and petals. Historians still debate whether Windhandel was the primary cause of the bubble's insane inflation, or merely a symptom of a mania that was already out of control. Was it a sophisticated new financial instrument that enabled the madness? Or was it just a new name for the timeless human desire to get rich quick? Asterisk, you can picture the weaver from the last street, the one with the worried eyes. Perhaps he wouldn't sell the bulb itself. Perhaps he would sell a contract for one of its future offsets, a flower that doesn't even exist yet. He could use the money from that sale to buy a contract for 2 cheaper bulbs, hoping their value would rise faster. Suddenly, he's no longer just a weaver. He's a speculator, a player in a grand, invisible game. He's trading in the wind, The term itself is so wonderfully poetic and damning. It captures the intangible, ethereal nature of the assets being traded. It's a market built on air, on whispers, on the collective delusion that the price of these flowers could only ever go up. As the first pale light of dawn begins to creep into the sky, casting the half-finished town hall in a ghostly gray, you feel a shiver that has nothing to do with the cold. You are witnessing the birth of the modern financial bubble in all its brilliant, terrifying, and insubstantial glory. The city begins to stir as dawn breaks. The deep silence of the night is gradually replaced by the sounds of a new day, the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the rattle of a milkmaid's pails, the slow, heavy tread of the city watch finishing their shift. You leave the grand emptiness of Dam Square behind and find yourself drawn back towards the quieter, residential canals, the ones lined with the impressive homes of the merchant class. The morning light is soft and forgiving, and it gives the tall, leaning houses a gentle, sleepy quality. It is on one of these pristine streets that you will witness the single most iconic, most legendary, and most baffling transaction of the entire Tulip Mania. You see a small crowd gathered in front of one of the grandest houses on the canal. They are not a rowdy mob, but a collection of somber, well-dressed men, a notary in a crisp, black robe, several merchants you recognize from their confident bearing, and a familia husband, a wife, and two small children standing slightly apart from the others. The family is dressed in their finest clothes, but their expressions are a mixture of hope and profound apprehension. They are standing before their own front door, but they hold themselves like visitors. The husband clutches a leather satchel, while the wife holds her children's hands so tightly her knuckles are white. A stout, prosperous-looking man steps forward. He is the buyer. He doesn't look at the family, but at the house. He takes in its fine brickwork, its gleaming windows, its handsome gable topped with a carved stone lion. This is a house that speaks of generations of stability and hard work. It is a bastion of security, a physical manifestation of a family's place in the world. He nods, satisfied. The notary, a man with a perpetually serious face, unrolls a thick piece of parchment. He begins to read aloud in a formal, monotonous drone. It is the deed to the house, an official document transferring ownership from the family to the stout merchant. The father of the family takes a deep breath and steps forward. He does not hand over a key. Instead, he opens his leather satchel. With the utmost care, he reaches inside and pulls out a small lumpy object wrapped in velvet. He unwraps it. It's a tulip bulb, but not just any bulb. You can hear the whispers ripple through the small crowd. Viceroy. It's one of the most famous and desirable varieties. A magnificent bazaar known for its regal splashes of red and purple on a golden-yellow background. This is the culmination of the market's madness, the most famous and possibly embellished story from the era. While many such trades were for land or goods, the exchange of a whole house for a single bulb became the defining legend of Tulip Mania, a historical fact that perfectly encapsulates the period's skewed sense of value. The merchant takes the bulb, holding it in his palm with the reverence one might afford a royal jewel. He inspects it closely, then gives a curt nod to the notary. The papers are signed. The wax seals are stamped. It is done. The family no longer owns the magnificent brick house behind them. They own a promise. They own a route. They have traded their past, their present, and their security for a stake in the future. The wife turns her head away, unable to watch, and you see a single tear trace a path down her cheek. The children look on, confused, sensing the gravity of the moment, but not understanding its cause. A lesser-known aspect of these high-stakes trades is the complex itemization that often accompanied them. In some recorded instances, the value of a single bulb was not met with a house outright, but with a meticulously listed collection of goods of equivalent value. One famous accounting for a viceroy bulb included not just land, but for tons of wheat, 8 tons of rye, for fat oxen, a dozen sheep, 2 hogsheads of wine, a suit of clothes, and a silver drinking cup. This wasn't just a simple swap. It was a formal, calculated appraisal of worth, a desperate attempt to legitimize an inherently irrational transaction. It was as if by listing enough tangible, sensible things, they could make the insane valuation of the bulb seem equally tangible and sensible. You watch the family walk away from their former home. They don't look back. The father clutches his now empty satchel, his face a mask of forced optimism. He has made the ultimate gamble. He has bet the roof over his children's heads on the continued rise of the tulip market. Historians still debate the frequency of these extreme trades. Were they common occurrences, or rare, sensational outliers that were exaggerated by contemporary chroniclers and moralists eager to condemn the foolishness of the era? Regardless of their frequency, the fact that even one such trade could be conceived of, let alone formally executed in broad daylight, tells you everything you need to know about the psychology of the bubble. In this moment, on this quiet canal street, value has lost all meaning. The intangible has conquered the tangible, and a family has traded their entire world for a dream, wrapped in a papery brown skin. Leaving the unsettling scene of the house trade behind, you feel a need for something real, something grounded and tangible. The world of Windhandel and bulb auctions has started to feel like a strange fever dream. You wander aimlessly, letting your feet carry you through the labyrinthine streets of Amsterdam, until you find yourself in a neighborhood known for its artists. The houses here are a little less grand, a little more bohemian. Many have large north-facing studio windows built into their upper floors to catch the steady, indirect light, so prized by painters. It is through one such window that you see a scene of quiet, focused creation that pulls you in. Asterisk, the door to the studio is slightly ajar, and you slip inside, unnoticed. The room is large and airy, yet cluttered with the paraphernalia of the artist's trade. Canvases of various sizes are stacked against the walls. Wooden easels stand like sentinels around the room, and the air is thick with the sharp, pleasant smell of linseed oil and turpentine. The artist, a man with a paint-smeared apron and an intensely focused gaze, stands before a large canvas. He is not a young man. His hair is thinning, and his face is etched with the fine lines of concentration. He is a master of his craft, one of the many anonymous, but brilliant painters of the Dutch Golden Age. He is not painting a portrait or a dramatic historical scene. He is painting flowers. Asterisk, on a simple wooden table next to him sits the subject, a bouquet of tulips arranged in a blue and white Delftware vase. They are magnificent. There is a deep purple Byblomen, a fiery red and yellow Bazaar, and a delicate pink canned white Rosen. They are all in their glorious, fleeting prime, their petals fully open to the cool studio light. The artist works with a quiet intensity. He is not trying to capture a perfect, photographic likeness of the flowers. He is trying to capture their essence, their life force. His brushstrokes are precise and deliberate. You watch as he mixes a dab of crimson paint with a touch of white on his palette, creating the perfect shade for the feathered edge of a petal. It is a slow, methodical process, a meditation in color and light. Asterisk, it's a historical fact that still life paintings, particularly flower paintings, became an enormously popular genre during this period. Wealthy merchants who couldn't always acquire a real Semper Augustus could commission a painting of one. The painting was a more permanent and often more affordable way to display one's wealth and sophisticated tastes. It was a status symbol that wouldn't wilt. The artist before you is meeting this demand, creating a product for a booming market. But as you watch him work, you realize it is more than just a commercial transaction for him. He has a deep, genuine reverence for his subject. He is preserving this moment of perfect, transient beauty before it fades. Asterisk, a lesser-known, quirky detail about these paintings is that they were often complete fantasies. A single bouquet in a Dutch still life, might feature flowers that bloomed in different seasons: a tulip from the spring, a rose from the summer, a carnation from the fall. The artists worked from sketches and studies they made throughout the year, composing impossible bouquets that could never exist in nature. Their goal was not botanical accuracy, but the creation of an ideal, harmonious composition. Furthermore, many of these paintings contained subtle moralizing symbols, the vanitous theme you considered earlier. You notice in the artist's composition a small snail crawling up the stem of one tulip, and a single, perfect dewdrop on a leaf. These were common symbols of the slow, inevitable passage of time and the fleeting nature of life. Even in celebrating the tulip's beauty, the art of the era often contained a gentle warning against becoming too attached to earthly things. Asterisk. The artist steps back from the canvas, his head cocked to one side, studying his work with a critical eye. He is capturing the very thing the traders in the tavern and the speculators in the market seem to ignore: the flower's mortality. The men trading Windhandel contracts are betting on a future value, an abstract number that they believe will rise indefinitely. The artist, however, is captivated by the present, by the undeniable fact that this perfect beauty in front of him will be gone in a week. Historians still debate the relationship between the painters and the tulip traders. Were the artists complicit in the mania, creating advertisements for the luxury goods everyone craved? Or were they offering a subtle critique, a quiet reminder that all this earthly glory was as fleeting as a cut flower in a vase? Looking at the deep concentration on this painter's face, you suspect he isn't thinking about the market at all. He is simply in a silent, respectful dialogue with beauty itself, trying to hold it on his canvas for just a little while longer. You leave the painter to his quiet work, the smell of linseed oil lingering in your senses, and feel a pull to see how far this strange obsession has spread. Amsterdam, with its bustling port and wealthy merchant class, is the undeniable epicenter of the craze, but a fever this potent rarely stays contained in one city. You decide to travel, to see the effect of Tulip Mania on the smaller, more provincial towns. Your journey is a short one, a comfortable ride on a trekschuit, a horse-drawn barge that glides smoothly along the canals, connecting the Dutch cities. It's the public transport of the Golden Age, reliable, scenic, and giving you ample time to watch the flat, green landscapes slide by. Asterisk. You disembark in the town of Haarlem. It's a handsome city, known for its historic breweries, its grand church, and its well-established linen trade. It's smaller than Amsterdam, and the pace of life feels slower, more traditional. Yet, even here, the tulip fever is running high. In fact, some of the most frantic and speculative trading occurred not in the capital, but in these smaller towns, where local citizens were desperate to get in on the action they saw making their Amsterdam counterparts so fabulously wealthy. You see it immediately. The talk in the bakeries and the butcher shops isn't of the price of bread or meat, but of the price of Switzers and generail pot bakers. Asterisk. You find your way to a large hall belonging to a local guild. Normally, this space would be used for meetings of the town's weavers or brewers, a place to regulate trade and uphold professional standards. Today, it has been repurposed. Inside, the atmosphere is electric. The room is packed with men from all walks of life, their faces flushed with excitement and wine, for these auctions were often accompanied by copious drinking. This is a more formalized version of the tavern trading you witnessed earlier. At the front of the room, a man stands on a raised platform, acting as an auctioneer. He isn't selling actual bulbs, of course. It's the dead of winter. He is selling paper promises, the Windhandel contracts, for bulbs that will be delivered in the spring. Asterisk. This is a well-documented part of the mania's history. Local guilds and colleges, with no official authority, began hosting their own tulip auctions to capitalize on the craze. They established elaborate rules, known as articles, to govern the trade. A portion of the profits from each sale, a small fee, known as wine money, went to the organizers, often to be spent on a celebratory feast for the traders. It was a way of lending an air of legitimacy and camaraderie to what was, in essence, pure gambling. You watch as the auctioneer holds up a contract for a single bulb of a variety called Admiral Van Horn. The bidding is fast and furious. A tailor shouts a bid, only to be immediately outbid by a cheesemonger. A baker, perhaps emboldened by the wine, makes a wildly optimistic offer that draws gasps and then cheers from the crowd. A lesser-known aspect of these small-town auctions was their intensely local and social character. These were not anonymous traders on a stock exchange. These were neighbors, colleagues, and lifelong rivals. A man might bid on a bulb not just for its potential profit, but to outdo the man who lives across the street, or to show off his newfound prosperity to his fellow guild members. The social pressure you considered with the weaver is magnified tenfold in this boisterous public setting. It's a performance of wealth and risk-taking. Historians still debate the economic literacy of the average participant in these rural auctions. Did they genuinely believe the prices could continue to rise indefinitely, or was it a collective game of chicken, where everyone hoped to get out before the inevitable crash, just one step ahead of their neighbor? Asterisk, you see a young farmer at the back of the room, his hands clasped nervously behind his back. He has likely sold a piece of his land, or perhaps a few of his best dairy cows, to get the capital to participate. He is watching the frenzied bidding with an expression of pure terror and exhilaration. He is completely out of his element, swept up in a tide of speculation he doesn't fully understand. The final price for the Admiral Van Horn is astronomical, enough to feed his family for a decade. The winner, the cheesemonger, beams with pride, accepting the backslapping congratulations of those around him. The farmer lets out a slow breath. He didn't bid. He couldn't bring himself to do it. You have just seen the human face of the bubble at its most dangerous point, when the mania has spread from the experts and the wealthy to the general public. It's no longer just the rich playing with their surplus income. It's ordinary people gambling with the very foundations of their lives, convinced they are participating in a can't-lose proposition. Asterisk, leaving the noisy auction in Harlem, you seek out a quieter, more contemplative side of the tulip trade. The shouting and the wine-fueled bidding feel like the public face of the mania. But you know there must be a more refined, deliberate aspect to it as well. You find it in the office of a well-known tulip dealer, a man who operates not in the chaos of a tavern, but in a wood-paneled room that smells of old paper and sealing wax. He is a broker, a middleman who connects wealthy buyers with the growers and other merchants. His trade is not in bulbs or even in simple contracts, but in something far more beautiful and seductive. A tulip book. Asterisk, he allows you to look at one of his catalogs, and you understand immediately why these objects were so prized. The book is large and heavy, bound in soft, supple leather, and tied with a silk ribbon. As you open it, you are not met with dry lists of names and prices. You are met with art. Each page is a life-sized, hand-painted watercolor illustration of a single tulip variety. The paintings are exquisite, rendered with the same skill and attention to detail as the still life you saw in the artist's studio. The colors are vibrant and true to life, capturing the exact shade of crimson in a Semper Augustus or the delicate purple feathering on a biblomen. Beneath each illustration, in elegant calligraphy, is the name of the tulip, and, sometimes, its weight and a recent sale price. Asterisk, this is the historical reality of the high-end tulip trade. These tulip books, tulpenboeken, were the luxury stock portfolios of the 1630s. They were not botanical reference manuals, but sales catalogs, commissioned by wealthy dealers to showcase their wares to discerning clients. A potential buyer could sit in a comfortable chair, sip a glass of expensive French wine, and browse through the book, choosing the flowers they wished to invest in. It was a civilized, elegant, and entirely abstract way to spend a fortune. The buyer wasn't purchasing a smelly, dirt-caked bulb. They were purchasing a beautiful idea, a perfect image on a page. This made the astronomical prices seem somehow more palatable. A lesser known and fascinating detail is that very few of these original tulip books have survived. Only a handful are known to exist today, making them incredibly rare historical artifacts. Furthermore, the accuracy of the prices listed in them is a subject of intense debate among historians. Some scholars believe the prices were genuine records of actual sales. Others argue that the prices were often wildly inflated or even entirely fictional, a form of marketing designed to drive up the perceived value of the bulbs and create a sense of frantic demand. It was the 17th century equivalent of putting a sold sticker on a house in a real estate catalog to make the remaining properties seem more desirable. Asterisk. You turn a page and see a particularly stunning illustration of a viceroy, the same variety that the family traded their house for. The artist has captured it perfectly, from the proud tilt of its bloom to the delicate, almost translucent quality of its petals. Beneath it, a price is listed that makes you catch your breath. It is more than a master painter like Rembrandt would earn in a decade. You can see how seductive this would be. The book transforms a speculative commodity into an object of connoisseurship and high art. It removes the grubby reality of the tavern trade and replaces it with the quiet, scholarly atmosphere of a library. It makes the act of gambling on flowers feel like a noble and sophisticated pursuit. Asterisk. The dealer, seeing your rapt attention, allows a small, knowing smile. He tells you that some of his wealthiest clients never even intend to take delivery of the bulbs they buy. They simply trade the ownership of the flower on paper, using the book as their reference, collecting a portfolio of beautiful watercolors that represent their investments. This is Windhandel in its most rarefied form. The connection to the actual, physical flower, planted in the cold, damp earth, has been almost entirely severed. The market is no longer about horticulture. It is about aesthetics and pure, unadulterated speculation. As you gently close the leather-bound cover of the tulip book, you feel you have finally reached the peak of the mania. It is a place of serene, beautiful, and utterly terrifying detachment from reality. The prices are no longer connected to the thing itself, but to a beautiful picture of the thing. It is now early February, 1637. The winter has been long and cold, but the tulip trading has been hotter than ever. Prices have reached their most ludicrous, stratospheric heights. A single rare bulb can be traded for the price of a country. A state and ordinary artisans are retiring on the profits from a handful of common varieties. The collective belief that has held this market aloft is at its absolute zenith. Everyone from the wealthiest merchant in Amsterdam to the humblest cheesemonger in Harlem is convinced that prices will continue to climb forever. Spring is just around the corner, and with it will come the delivery of the bulbs and the settlement of all the paper contracts. The mood is one of heady, giddy anticipation, and it is on a perfectly ordinary winter's day, at a routine auction right back here in Harlem, that the first, almost imperceptible crack appears in the great, beautiful bubble. Asterisk. You find yourself, once again, in the Guildhall, the same one you visited before. The atmosphere is just as loud, the wine flowing just as freely. An auction is in progress for a particularly fine collection of bulbs being sold from the estate of a recently deceased man. The bidding has been strong all morning. Then, the auctioneer announces the prize lot, 1 pound of a highly regarded variety called The crowd murmurs in appreciation. This is a solid, dependable bulb, a favorite of the middling speculators. The bidding begins at a high, but not unreasonable, price of around 1,200 guilders. Asterisk. And then, silence. A strange, awkward quiet falls over the room. The auctioneer, looking surprised, repeats the price, his voice booming with a confidence he clearly doesn't feel. 1,200 guilders, a bargain for a pound of prime Switzers. Who will open the bidding? He scans the faces in the crowd. The men are looking at each other, not at him. They are shifting in their seats, fiddling with their wine glasses. No one raises a hand. No one shouts a bid. The cheesemonger who was so bold before now seems intensely interested in the scuff on his shoe. The tailor is suddenly locked in a whispered conversation with his neighbor. This is the moment. This is the historical turning point. The incident that many historians pinpoint as the beginning of the end. A routine auction in Haarlem on February 3rd, 1637, where a prize lot of bulbs failed to find a buyer at its reserve price. Asterisk, the auctioneer tries again, lowering the price. 1,000 guilders then, a gift at 1,000. Still, nothing. A nervous cough breaks the silence. The confidence that has filled this room and every tavern, guild hall, and merchant's office in the Netherlands has suddenly, inexplicably, evaporated. It's like a spell has been broken. Just minutes before, these same men were outbidding each other with reckless abandon. Now, a collective doubt has crept into the room. A thought, once unthinkable, is now flickering in every mind. Asterisk, what if the price doesn't go up? What if I'm the fool who buys at the very top? Asterisk, asterisk, a lesser-known detail about this specific auction is that the bulbs were being sold to benefit the deceased man's orphans. The failure to sell was not just a market event. It was a social embarrassment and a minor tragedy for the children, depending on the sale. This adds a layer of poignant, human drama to the economic turning point. The crowd's sudden reluctance to bid wasn't just about financial caution. It was about a group of men collectively realizing that their speculative game had very real-world consequences, and they were suddenly unwilling to play. Asterisk, the auctioneer, flustered and sweating, finally gives up. The Switzers go unsold. The rest of the auction is a disaster. Bulb after bulb is offered, and each one is met with the same deafening silence, or with bids that are a tiny fraction of what they would have fetched just the day before. The party atmosphere is gone, replaced by a somber, anxious tension. Men who arrived as friends and fellow speculators are now eyeing each other with suspicion. Everyone wants to sell, and suddenly, no one wants to buy. Historians still debate the exact trigger for this sudden reversal. Was it this specific auction? Was it a rumor of plague returning? Or was it simply that the bubble had grown so large, so detached from any semblance of reality, that it had become fragile enough to be popped by the slightest pinprick of doubt? Asterisk, you watch as the men begin to file out of the guild hall. They are not talking or laughing now. They move with a quiet, panicked urgency. The news of what has happened here will spread like wildfire. A messenger will ride to Amsterdam, another to Rotterdam. By tomorrow, the entire country will know that in Haarlem, a prize bulb went unsold. The shared dream is beginning to crumble. The wind has stopped blowing, and everyone who is holding a piece of paper, a promise for a flower they bought for a fortune, is about to realize that the wind was the only thing holding its value up. Asterisk, asterisk. The news from the failed auction in Haarlem spreads not with a shout, but with a chilling, insidious whisper. It moves through the canals and along the cobbled streets, from tavern to counting house, from the grandest merchant's estate to the humblest weaver's workshop. The crash of the tulip market is not a single, dramatic event like a stock market bell ringing on a Black Tuesday. It is a slow, silent, and deeply personal unraveling that happens over the course of a few weeks. It is a collapse of belief, a private crisis of faith repeated in thousands of households across the Netherlands. Asterisk, you walk the streets of Amsterdam in the days that follow. The city looks the same. The ships are still arriving in the harbor. The cranes are still hoisting cargo. The merchants are still walking with their purposeful stride. But the mood has changed. The giddy optimism has been replaced by a quiet, gnawing anxiety. You see men gathered on street corners, not in boisterous groups, but in small, hushed huddles, their faces grim. They are holding papers in their hands, the Windhandel contracts, that were, Just a week ago, their tickets to unimaginable wealth. Now, they are just paper. Asterisk, you follow one such man, a well-dressed merchant you recognize from the crowds at the exchange. He walks to the house of another dealer, the man who sold him a contract for 10 Gouda bulbs at the height of the market. He knocks on the door. He wants to honor the contract, to pay the agreed-upon price and take delivery of his bulbs when they are ready in the spring, but he can't. The man who sold him the Goudas had, in turn, bought a contract for a single, far more expensive viceroy from a third party, and that third party is now ruined, having gambled everything on the market's continued rise. The chain of promises, the intricate web of debt and speculation that had seemed so clever and modern, has become a trap. This is the historical reality of the crash, a cascade of defaults. The contracts were unenforceable because the entire system was built on the assumption of ever-increasing prices. Once they fell, the whole structure became insolvent overnight. Asterisk, the merchant leaves the house, his face pale. He has not been paid, and therefore he cannot pay his own debtors. He is a wealthy man, or he was. Now, he is not so sure. He stands by a canal, staring into the murky green water, and you see the flicker of panic in his eyes. He has not lost a physical object. He has lost a number, a future he had already begun to live in his mind. The house he was planning to buy, the dowry for his daughter, the commission for a grand family portrait has all vanished into thin air. Asterisk, a lesser-known aspect of the crash is its sheer silence. There were no riots in the streets, no storming of a central bank. The Dutch government, for the most part, stayed out of it. The trade had always operated in a gray area, outside of official exchanges, and the authorities were reluctant to get involved in what they saw as the settling of private gambling debts. They issued a few edicts, suggesting that contracts could be settled for a small percentage of their original value, but these were largely ignored. The resolution of the crisis was left to the individuals, the guilds, and the cities to sort out, for themselves, a process that was messy, inconsistent, and drawn out over many months. Asterisk, you see the weaver again, the man you watched pondering his single bulb by candlelight. You find him in his workshop, the great loom silent. He sits at his table, staring at the same bulb. His face is not anxious anymore. It is a mask of weary resignation. The tavern traders who had once laughed and dreamed of riches are now his debtors, and they cannot pay him. The contract he held for a future offset is now worthless. He has not been financially ruined in the way the great merchants have, for he did not have as far to fall. But his one great hope, his single lottery ticket out of a life of toil, has been revealed to be a dud. Historians still debate the true extent of the economic devastation. For a long time, the story was that the crash plunged the entire Dutch economy into a deep depression. More recent scholarship suggests that the impact was more contained, affecting a relatively small but loud group of speculators, and that the broader Dutch economy remained robust. But for the individuals who were caught in the storm, like this weaver, the financial and psychological toll was immense. Asterisk, he picks up the bulb. He walks to the small patch of dirt behind his workshop, digs a shallow hole with his hands, and places the bulb inside. He covers it with earth. It is a simple, quiet gesture. He is no longer planting a fortune. He is just planting a flower. The great, shared delusion is over. The silence that follows is not peaceful. It is the heavy, suffocating silence of broken dreams and the bitter taste of reality returning. In the somber aftermath of the crash, the city of Amsterdam feels like it's holding its breath. The frantic energy is gone, replaced by a tense, uncertain quiet. The problem is simple and universal. Thousands of people are holding contracts that oblige them to buy tulip bulbs for prices that are now 10, 20, or even 100 times their current market value. No one can afford to honor these deals, yet the contracts are legally signed documents. The entire speculative pyramid has collapsed. leaving behind a mountain of worthless paper and a tangled web of broken promises. The question on everyone's lips is, what happens now? Asterisk, you witness the attempts to answer this question. You see men who were once friends and trading partners, now meeting in tense, awkward encounters on the street, avoiding eye contact. A man who owes a fortune to another simply turns and walks the other way. What can the creditor do? Taking him to court would be a long, expensive process with an uncertain outcome. So, for now, they just stare at each other across the cobblestones. Two men trapped in a financial limbo. This period of confusion and inaction is a key historical fact of the aftermath. There was no single, coordinated bailout or resolution. It was a slow, painful process of individuals trying to salvage what they could from the wreckage. Asterisk, you find yourself in a notary's office. The room is crowded with anxious-looking men, all clutching their now toxic contracts. They are here to renegotiate. A wealthy merchant, the original seller of a Semper Augustus contract, is sitting opposite a syndicate of buyers who had pooled their money. The original price was 5,000 gil. The bulb is now worth, perhaps, 50. The merchant is furious. A deal is a deal, he insists, pounding the table. He wants his money. The buyers, a baker, a tailor, and a brewer, look back at him with a mixture of fear and defiance. They don't have 5,000 gil. If he forces them into bankruptcy, he will get nothing. It is a stalemate. Asterisk, after hours of bitter argument, they reach a compromise. The notary proposes that the buyers pay the seller 10% of the original contract price, and the debt will be considered settled. The merchant, seeing that this is the best he is likely to get, reluctantly agrees. The buyers pool their remaining coins, their faces etched with relief and ruin. They have avoided financial oblivion, but they have still lost a substantial amount of money. This process, known as composition, became one of the most common ways the crisis was resolved. It was a messy, ad hoc solution that satisfied no one but allowed society to move on. A lesser-known detail is that many growers, the men who actually produced the bulbs, were among the most devastated. They had contracts to sell their entire spring harvest at peak prices. When the buyers defaulted en masse, the growers were left with fields full of tulips that were suddenly worth almost nothing. Asterisk, you see the human cost of this everywhere. You pass the grand house that was traded for the Viceroy bulb. The family that sold it is gone, their fate uncertain. The new owner, the merchant who bought it, is now saddled with a flower that is worth less than a single brick in the magnificent facade. The house stands as a silent monument to the peak of the madness. Historians still debate the social consequences of the crash. Did it lead to a wave of bankruptcies and suicides, as the popular legends claim? The historical record is surprisingly thin on this. While some individuals were undoubtedly ruined, there is little evidence of a widespread social catastrophe. It seems the Dutch, in their pragmatic way, mostly chose to just forget. They absorbed their losses, tore up their worthless contracts, and quietly tried to move on, too embarrassed to dwell on their collective folly. Asterisk, later that day, you see a group of children playing in a public garden. They are laughing and chasing each other. One of them picks a simple red tulip that has bloomed early. He presents it to his friend with a grand, theatrical bow. They both giggle. To them, it is just a flower. A pretty, colorful thing to be enjoyed for a moment and then discarded. It has no price, no speculative value. It is simply beautiful. This simple act feels like a return to sanity. The fever has broken, and the tulip is slowly, painfully, beginning its journey back to what it always was, a flower. The process of picking up the pieces is not glorious or dramatic. It is a quiet, piecemeal, and deeply human process of accepting loss, renegotiating reality, and finding a way to start again. Asterisk, spring has finally arrived in the Netherlands. It has come softly, tentatively at first, and then with a gentle, determined rush of life. The ice has melted from the canals. The days are growing longer, and a pale but persistent sun is warming the damp earth. The financial fever that gripped the nation all winter has broken, leaving behind a dull, collective headache of regret. The shouting in the guild halls has faded. The worthless contracts have been tucked away in drawers, and now, in the quiet aftermath, the tulips are blooming. You find yourself in a large, formal garden, perhaps the famous Hortus Botanicus in Leep, where tulips were first seriously studied in Holland. * All around you, the subjects of the winter's madness are pushing up through the soil, opening their faces to the sky. There are neat rows of solid reds, sunny yellows, and pristine whites, the sensible, healthy, and now largely ignored, common varieties, but dotted among them, like rebellious artists in a crowd of accountants, are the broken ones. You see a viceroy, its gold petals slashed with violent streaks of crimson. You see a biblomen, its white cup feathered with the most delicate shades of lilac. They are breathtaking, and now that the noise of the market has died down, you can finally appreciate them for what they are, not as assets, but as living things. You remember the baker in the tavern all those months ago, calling the breaking a beautiful sickness. He had no idea how right he was. Because it was, in fact, a sickness. The stunning, intricate patterns that drove men to trade their homes and fortunes were the symptoms of a disease. This is the great, central irony of the entire Tulip Mania. The most prized and valuable attribute a tulip could have was the result of an infection by a specific plant virus, now known as the tulip-breaking virus. It's a type of mosaic virus, and it works by interfering with the flower's color pigmentation. It would suppress the top layer of color in certain spots, allowing the base color, usually white or yellow, to show through, creating those magnificent, flame-like patterns. The virus was carried from plant to plant by a specific vector, the peach potato aphid. You can picture them now. These tiny green insects, acting as nature's most clueless and influential art critics. An aphid would feed on an infected tulip, then fly to a healthy, plain one, a few rows over, carrying the virus with it. The next year, that plain bulb would bloom, miraculously broken, and its owner would believe he had been blessed by God or good fortune, when in fact he'd merely been the beneficiary of a well-traveled bug. They were paying a premium for a flaw, a spectacular genetic error message. They were trading in beautiful patience. But here is the lesser known, and perhaps more poignant, detail. The virus didn't just make the flowers beautiful, it also made them weak. An infected bulb would produce offsets that were smaller and less vigorous than those from a healthy plant. Over a few generations, the lineage would often die out completely. This is why the rarest varieties, like the Semper Augustus, were so mind-bendingly scarce. The very thing that created their value was also a genetic dead end, slowly strangling the life out of the strain. It was a built-in, tragic obsolescence. The growers of the time knew this, even if they didn't know why. They knew that their most valuable bulbs were often frustratingly delicate and difficult to propagate. This leads to one of the great lingering questions of the era. Did the most experienced growers and botanists suspect that the breaking was a sign of disease rather than vigor? They didn't have microscopes or a concept of viruses, of course, but some astute observers, going as far back as Carolus Clusius, the botanist who first popularized tulips in the Netherlands, noted that the broken varieties were infected. Did the professionals have an inkling that this beautiful variegation was a kind of botanical rot? Or did they, like everyone else, attribute it to the mysterious whims of soil, weather, or divine intervention? It's likely they simply accepted it as a frustrating paradox, that the path to the greatest beauty and wealth was also a path of decay. You kneel down and look closely at a single broken tulip. In the clear spring light, you can see the almost impossible sharpness of the lines between the colors. It doesn't look like a painting. It looks like a glitch in reality. Knowing its secret doesn't diminish its beauty. If anything, it deepens it. It is not a symbol of perfection and divine artistry, but of a glorious, chaotic mistake of nature. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes, the most beautiful things are the most fragile, the result of a flaw, a sickness, a magnificent imperfection. The sun is setting, casting long golden rays across the garden. The tulips seem to glow from within, their colors deepening in the final hour of light. Your journey is coming to an end. You have seen the heights of the mania and the quiet despair of its collapse. You have stood in the sunlit study of a wealthy merchant and the smoky back room of a tavern. You have witnessed a house traded for a root and an artist trying to capture a fleeting moment of beauty on canvas. Now, in the aftermath, you are left with the flower itself, no longer a commodity, but a quiet, living thing rooted in the earth. You walk out of the botanical garden and back towards the familiar canals of Amsterdam. The city is settling into its evening rhythm. The frantic speculative energy of the winter is a fading memory. The merchants are still trading, of course, but they are trading in pepper and silk and coffee solid, sensible things with predictable value. The word tulip is now spoken with a wry, embarrassed smile. It has become a byword for folly, a cautionary tale told to children about the dangers of greed and getting carried away. The historical fact is that tulips never again reached the insane prices of 1636. The market crashed and it stayed crashed. The flower's reputation was, for a time, completely ruined. To even show an interest in rare tulips was to mark yourself as a fool or a reckless gambler. You find a quiet spot on a bench overlooking a canal. A small barge glides by, its wake gently rocking the reflections of the tall, gabled houses. You watch as a woman on the opposite bank leans out of her window to water a small wooden box filled with flowers. In it are a few simple, red and yellow tulips. They are not broken, they are not rare, and they are certainly not worth a fortune. They are just cheerful, everyday flowers, adding a splash of color to the gray stone. This is the tulip's final, lasting legacy. After the mania subsided, the flower did not disappear from the Netherlands. Instead, it underwent a profound transformation. It was democratized, having lost its speculative allure. The tulip was slowly embraced for its simple, intrinsic beauty. Dutch growers, over the next centuries, became the world's masters of tulip cultivation, not by chasing the unstable virus-induced breaks, but through patient, scientific hybridization. They developed thousands of new, healthy, and robust varieties, creating a kaleidoscope of shapes and colors. This is the lesser known, and far more important, epilogue to the story of Tulip Mania. The Dutch love affair with the tulip didn't end with the crash. It simply matured. The speculative fever broke, and in its place grew a genuine, deep-seated national affection. The flower became an enduring symbol of the Netherlands, not of its financial folly, but of its horticultural genius and its appreciation for cultivated beauty. You think of all the people you've encountered on your journey. Peter, the merchant, with his single, priceless bloom. The weaver, with his candlelit hopes. The family who traded their home, and the painter who immortalized the flower's fleeting life. Historians still debate the very name Tulip Mania. Some argue it wasn't a true national mania at all, but a more localized phenomenon, its story sensationalized by moralizing pamphleteers after the crash. They point out that the Dutch economy quickly recovered and continued its golden age for another half-century. Was it a defining economic crisis, or just a bizarre, fascinating, and ultimately insignificant blip in a long history of prosperity? As the last light fades from the sky and the first lamps are lit in the windows along the canal, you realize the answer doesn't really matter. The story endures not because of its economic impact, but because of what it reveals about human nature, our capacity for collective delusion, Our strange and arbitrary assignment of value, our endless, hopeful, and sometimes calamitous search for a shortcut to a better life. But it's also a story about beauty, the simple, undeniable beauty of a flower that, for one brief, strange moment, drove an entire nation mad. The tulip has survived its own fame. It has outlived the speculators and the Windhandel traders. It has returned to the earth, to the quiet window boxes, and the vast, colorful fields of the Dutch countryside. Humble, beautiful, and finally, blessedly, worthless. Word count, 1060. The journey is over now. The canals of 17th century Amsterdam fade away, leaving only the quiet of your own room. The story of the tulip, with its strange fevers and quiet resolutions, has been told. Let the echoes of that time, the clatter of cobblestones, the murmur of the tavern, the scent of beeswax and damp earth gently recede into the background of your mind. There is nothing left to figure out, no more prices to track, no more contracts to sign. There is only the stillness of this moment, here and now. Feel the gentle weight of your body, supported and safe. Notice the soft rhythm of your own breathing, a quiet, steady anchor in the present. In and out. Each breath is a soft wave, washing away the remnants of the day, carrying you further from the shore of wakefulness. The past is a storybook that you can now gently close. The future is a distant, misty landscape that requires none of your attention tonight. All that exists is this peaceful, deepening calm. Allow your thoughts to become like clouds drifting lazily across a vast, quiet sky, arriving and departing without effort, without meaning. There is only rest now, the deep, restorative peace that awaits you in your own time, at your own pace. There is nothing left to do but to let go.